All right, so jumping right in, this is the 3D model for this build. So of course I didn't want to do the entire wall, but it is going to be an inset niche. So this is the colors, color of the wall. This is kind of what I'm going for this build. This is where we started. So this was like a fake window that they had downstairs. There's a trim. There were some lights. There's a light installed that I'm going to end up using some LEDs to do. But starting out, I didn't really like this. You can also kind of see behind it looks a little blue. The wall, the foundation of the house is actually painted blue, like sky blue. And they did that just 'cause it's kind of a fake window look. But here I am just unscrewing the frame. The frame went all the way around, obviously, but it was pretty just a few screws, so nothing too hard to take all the way off. And that exposed some more screws that I could then buzz out, but pretty simple, easy stuff here. One screw actually held it shut, and then there's a hinge that you can see it opens up. You could service it in the back if you needed to, but there was like at least 40 screws holding this frame together. Like I understand it. There's this pretty big panel, right? Obviously you don't want it to fall off, but there was so many screws. It was kind of crazy that they had this many screws holding it together. I only showed unscrewing maybe like 40, but they were probably every half inch there was a screw, which is kind of overkill in my opinion. But once I got all of those out, I could lift it up and off and set that to the side to uncover what would be the most difficult part of this build. All right, this right here was a challenge. So my first attempt to get this frame. So this frame was very structural. I assume they built this whenever they built the house and were kind of framing up the wall. So there is long, very, very long nails holding these boards in. And so my first attempt was to just pry it up. So this is like a trim puller tool. I've used it for things other than trim, similar to a crowbar. It's just very small, right? It's a lot smaller. So my first attempt was to try and knock it out with a hammer. Couldn't get that to move any. So I ended up using my circular saw. This was my second attempt to kind of get the exact depth of the 2x4 so I'm not cutting into the board below it, but also just needed to give it a little bit more persuasion because it was hard. I could not pry it out of there. Those nails were very strong holding that thing down. They were doing what they're supposed to do. All right, so here's my first attempt just to cut the board in half so that I could then pry up one side. And this worked eventually. It didn't work on the first attempt. I wouldn't say this is really anything special or crazy technique, just going as far as I can go and, then trying again to pry it up. So here is the second attempt still, but after I cut it in half. And as you can see, it's still not moving. It's budging a little bit, but this is just the first half and it is working, right? So that's why I said it did work eventually, not on the first attempt, but I was fighting. You're gonna see by the end of this, I was really sweating, trying to and like working hard to get this board off. I'm sure there's another method or way to do this, but I did fight. And so here I am. You saw a little spark because I ended up cutting one of the nails on accident. No big deal, right? But probably helped me out in the end because the nails were very long. You'll see them once we get closer to the end. But finally got it done after working it, popped that side. Still was trying to pull the whole thing. Ended up just grabbing it with my hand and ripping it off. A little bit of leverage, and you can see it split right where the nail was. So grab that. I still had to use a hammer to pull out the nails, but got it off. And this is victory. You can see it on my face how happy I was. But I was sweating. I can't even lie to you. I was really sweating and fighting with these boards. Same thing here on the side. Just went straight down the middle. These sides and tops were a little bit easier. Not sure why I struggled so hard with the bottom. Maybe I just learned the technique and so made things a little bit easier. But you can see here, same thing. Wrestled with it in the beginning, cut it a little bit, and then I was able to pull it off. So if I had a longer crowbar, maybe that would make it easier. I would have had more leverage. Couldn't find my crowbar. I don't know where it was at, but you can never find things when you need them, right? Just pulled off a little piece and I could go ahead and, pull it off. I didn't fight nearly as hard. I keep saying that, but you can clearly see in the video I in fact did. But in my head, these came off a little bit easier than the bottom did, especially the top. They use smaller nails for whatever reason. Through the process of trying to remove these boards, I ended up damaging the wall in some spots. Of course, not ideal, but it does happen, right? It's probably going to happen. So just a little bit more drywall work that I'm going to have to do. So I'm just taking a razor blade and scoring the edge. This way I can pull off the trim that makes the sharp corner. Most walls, any type of outside wall corner, you're typically going to have this little bead around it. And you're just going to put your mud on there. And then when you paint it and everything, it gives you a nice sharp corner so that you're not trying to shape it by hand with the, with the drywall mud. So makes it easy, but I did need to remove it. And I'm just going to go over this with some mud. For the bottom, I ended up cutting it out completely. So I did use the knife method there, but then I ended up going in with my multi-tool and just cutting that drywall so that I could get a nice sharp edge. I am going to have to repair some of this because the shelf that I plan on building is only going to hide some of this. So I am going to have to put in some drywall there and make sure that's hidden so that you can't see it from the bottom. This should be a lot quicker to cut through this, but the blade that I was using was just a little bit dull. I didn't want to use my good wood cutting blade to cut through this drywall. So just threw on an old dull blade I had to cut through this. It got the job done. It took a little bit longer than I would want, but it worked out. Got it done and was able to move on to the next step. Shout out to my boy Jeremy over at Cultivated. He came over and helped me out. He does haircuts, tattoos, artwork, anything you need, he could take care of it. But he also is really good with building things. So we've built some stuff at his house, built some stuff at my house. So I called him and he came over and helped me out with this build. Drywall is cool. I can do it, but it's not my strong suit. I typically end up spending a lot of time on it. So he came over to kind of help me out and point me in the right direction with products that I should use. And so we need to hang the drywall. So we ended up getting like a 12-foot sheet of drywall and just cut it up in half. But the goal really was to make as much space and as deep of a niche as possible. So a lot of people, what they would typically do here is build this wall out. I didn't want to do that because I would lose space. And there was each shelf was only about 7 inches deep. And so anything smaller than that, it's kind of a waste because you want it to be inside of the niche. You don't want the shelf to stick out, obviously. And so that just kind of limited the amount of space we could do. And so we elected to just screw it directly into the foundation. A lot of people don't do that, mainly because if there's a leak later down the road, you're going to see that in your drywall. It's going to ruin your drywall. You're going to have to pull everything out. But I have pretty good drainage and also take care of around my house so that water can never penetrate right here. And if it does, no big deal. I'll replace it. But this is what we did. We ended up just using my hammer drill and, my impact. We just used the hammer function on it and drilled directly into the cement and used some flathead cement screws. Got all of the drywall lined up, put this little piece on the top. Same exact method, just use the hammer drill to drill into that concrete and then use the impact to just secure it. If you are going to do something like this with drywall screwing into cement, just make sure you get the flat head. Typically these come with the hex head and it's just going to stick out, so you're not going to be able to get it flush. And these, while we kind of sunk them a little bit into the drywall like you're supposed to, and all we're going to do is just mud right over the top of them. So it makes it nice and easy. If they weren't flat, obviously you wouldn't be able to do that. And just put as many screws as we felt was necessary. We bought like a 40 pack, I believe, and used just about every single one of them. So if you have them, you might as well use them. These are pretty small holes. It's going to be pretty easy to patch these up.
For that, we could make the things for, well, really we could make them for all around, and you just got to move them around.
Yeah, the wires.
Yeah,
so like we don't have to completely fill it in. We just do like one at the bottom, one here, one there.
Yeah.
And then
so
I think I am gonna probably do one in the middle, one right here, so I can drill a hole. And then we can just kind of wait to.
3 1/4.
So another important reason why I'm glad Jeremy came over was he helped me with figuring out how I was going to fill those gaps. So the studs, like I was saying, the studs of the wall, they were pulled off the foundation. They weren't built directly on the foundation like you typically see in a lot of basements. And so there's a gap. There was probably about a 4-inch gap between the foundation and the frame that we were building everything. And so with securing drywall, I didn't want to just secure it to what was there and risk, the corners not sitting flush or pushing out or just not having support all the way around it, especially considering I'm going to be securing the shelf brackets that I build the floating shelves on. And so this is what we came up with. We just filled that gap in a few spots, and then we could screw in some boards like you see on the top directly to that. And that gave us support all the way around the board. And pretty simple stuff here. So once Jeremy took off, I could go ahead and finish this up. Got those boards and ripped this one on the table saw. Didn't show it, but simple stuff. Just ripped it, got the measurement, ripped it, and just securing these directly to those brackets that we built out. So just made a little mark on the front so I know where they're at and just secured them in on this side and on the top. And on the right side is where I was going to run my LED wires. So I left a few gaps where I could pull those wires through, as you can see there on the side. So once I got this first piece of drywall up, I ended up just doing the top first. Not sure why that's what I went with, but it just seemed like the easiest. So secured the top. I was going to end up creating like a custom shelf to go up here. I was going to get a wall sconce and do it that way, but just for the price of what they were, like it just didn't make sense to me where I could just build one from scratch. So just got an extra LED wire strip and went about it that way. For the LEDs, I don't have a ton of experience, but it's pretty simple. Connect the red wires with the red wires, black wires with the black wires. And with LEDs, you can't put this directly into the wall. So I went ahead and got these little connectors and just kind of daisy chained all of the wires together. And then the wires that I have here on the end are going to connect directly into the adapter and plug into that light switch. This light switch is hardwired into the house, into the wall. And so it was already there. This is what the previous LEDs were plugged into. I discovered this after, so had to order a few more pieces and parts to make it work. But once I got everything good, I could move into mudding. And so this is the little trim piece I was telling you about that creates the bead, the outside bead. So I did need to do some drywall work initially. This was after the first coat, so I believe this is the second coat. You will see some gaps around the top, but don't worry about those because they'll be covered with the top custom piece that I'm creating. And this was my method. I ended up using some of the green Home Depot mud. I can't remember the exact what it's called, but Jeremy recommended I use that. It spreads a little bit easier. This is going to be the only clip I'm going to show doing drywall. Like I said, I can get it done. I can make it happen, but it takes me a lot longer than it typically would a lot of people. This is just not my strong suit. So I can make it happen, get it sanded, make it look good, but not my strong suit. So this will be the only clip I show. Once I got everything good and sanded, you could see how everything came out. I was happy with it. Now I just need to throw some primer on it, and then I can paint it. And then I can start working on the shelves that are going to go into this niche. Now that I got the niche, all the drywall work is done, I can move into actually building the shelves. So now we're back in the shop. First thing I did was cut a thin strip, and I'm going to use this to secure the shelves to it. All right, so this is going to go all the way around on each side. So these are those strips that I had just cut. This is going to be one screw in the middle, throw the level on it to make sure the shelves are obviously level. You don't want them to be leaning. And so once I got that, I could go back in with the cement drill bit. So this is drywall, and there is this 3/4 inch piece of plywood, but behind that is still cement. So I used the cement drill bit to get all the way through it and secured these with the same method I did for the drywall. I didn't paint this yet just because I wanted to make sure everything was in, and I'm sure there's going to be some drywall work that's needed. I am foreshadowing because there's a lot more that was needed after I started throwing the shelves in there, cutting the miters on the shelves themselves. And my face looks crazy because this was throwing chips at me. I don't know why, but I probably should have thrown on some glasses and a mask because it was smacking me in the face. But I got it done. I wish I could say that this method was something that I thought of, but it's not. Right? I learned this actually on YouTube. I can't remember who exactly it was, but what you're going to do is you're just going to put both of the pieces together that were mitered, and you're going to tape the gaps together. And so this will allow you to miter fold it. And so first thing here, make sure they're lined up. Make sure you like the grain orientation and it's kind of wrapping. If you did a book match, this is where you would make sure it's perfect. You're going to pull that gap tight together, as tight as you can get it. Your miters may not always be perfect, especially depending on what tools you have, but you're just going to pull it tight so that there's no gap all the way across it. Then you're going to take a long piece of tape. It doesn't have to be this exact tape, but I ran out of blue tape, so this is what I was using. And once you get that piece of tape, then you can just fold it up. And now that these two pieces are connected, you could throw some glue in that gap and then use some more tape to pull that and hold it tight as that glue dries. And then you just take the glue off, hit it with the light sand, and your shelf is perfect. When you see the finished product, you're going to be very surprised that this is plywood. A lot of people are when they see how good high grade plywood looks whenever you stain it. So this is A grade cabinet grade plywood. It's red oak veneer. And so of course you have all the plies, but the piece that you're going to be seeing is a red oak veneer. And it looks very, very good whenever you stain it, finish it. It's going to look just as good as a walnut board or a red oak board, my bad. And once you get this, you just throw some tape. Like I was saying, this is just going to hold that angle. You could even throw in some 45-degree angle clamps if you wanted to, but in my experience, if you cut nice 45-degree angles, you're going to get a good 90-degree angle with plywood. And so now we just got to paint the gaps. So this is pretty satisfying. Unfortunately, I lost the footage of me tape, or I guess painting the entire thing would have been very, very good ASMR footage, I know. But once I primed it, so you could kind of see the area that I primed, I tried to make it as straight as possible. And so then I just went in with the paint and got the same paint I used to paint the walls. So everything matched up nicely. I did feather it out a bit so that way you can't just see the spot directly where I start painting. It's kind of feathered out in the wall. It blends in a little bit better. Right here, I'm setting the height of the blade for the C channel. So I bought this channel for the LEDs to go in. It comes with a diffuser on the top, but I needed to cut out a dado. If you have a dado stack blade, it comes in really handy here. I'm just using my saw blade, and so just ran it through, and I'm just going to slowly bump the fence out to create this wider gap. So I've done the same thing with like cabinets. If you've ever made grooves or anything like that for plywood to slide into, that's the first one. And I'm just going to do a bunch of cuts just like that one. And eventually it's going to be wide. So I ran each one through before I bumped it over. That way the slot is in the exact same spot for all shelves. This was 3 pieces because I'm gonna have 4 shelves total, but 3 are gonna have lights, and I just kept bumping those out until you can see I got this gap that you see here. This is gonna be on the bottom towards the back, and that channel fits nicely right in that. I ended up cutting the channel just with my saw. This is aluminum, so pretty easy to cut this. So right here, I'm discovering one, I was banging up the walls, messing them up whenever I was putting those shelves in. But 2, I messed up when I wired these up. And so I probably should have had the boards go right in the middle. And so now I need to move these up. Main reason is I thought I was going to be able to cut a little groove in the bottom of the shelf where this will slide in and you wouldn't be able to see it, but it just makes the most sense to just go straight through it so that this wire can then just slide right through, sit on top. Similar to what you see me doing here, it goes through that middle piece, and there's not going to be anything in the middle that's interfering with it. So this is the better method. I just had to cut that out a little bit of the drywall to pull it up, drill a hole through this side piece, and then I can go ahead and just secure it, and everything worked out. Re-screw it back into the wall, and this solved my problems. And the shelf went right over that hole, so there was really minimal rework that I had to do, or I guess fixing the issues. It was pretty much non-existent just because the shelf covered that little hole that you see. So it worked out. So now I can get my first look and also just make sure the hole placement was good and it would cover the hole. And all of those were good. So I'm happy with how this turned out. I can pull this off and now start throwing my LEDs on. So this is LED strip. I got this off of Amazon. I got 3 rolls total, and they're pretty long, so I still have some left. But the good thing about these is once you put them on, you can cut them in a certain spot, and it's not going to damage the light. So obviously, if you wanted to get a longer strip, you're not really going to be able to do that. You're going to have to get some adapters and reconnect them. But also, I didn't show me staining these. I wanted the emphasis for this project not to be on staining. I've stained in pretty much every project, so you know my process. But I wanted to be on the construction and showing you things that I haven't done before. And so with this, I just grabbed some wire snips actually. They worked really good to cut this. It's just a little piece of plastic for the diffuser, and I can pull those wires. I drilled a little hole in the back and pulled the wires. And so this is just going to connect directly to the shelf. And so what I ended up doing was the aluminum channel, I ended up drilling a hole through that, up through all the way through. And so with the diffuser on, you're never going to be able to see this hole, but it is going to connect to these wires that I ran behind the wall. So I'm using a clamp just to hold it in place, and then I can throw some screws up into the bottom. And so this is how it's going to get secured into that 3/4 inch plywood. And then I'm going to have the top piece that I mitered with the top and the middle piece, and I'm just going to have to set it into this spot. And that's the shelf. Pretty easy construction. Could throw in a couple more, brackets in the middle if you wanted to. I didn't, just because I know I'm not going to have anything super heavy here. But once I got that in place, I could go ahead and connect the wires red to red, black to black, and cut out that excess wire. Once I got this done, I could move into putting the top piece on. So I already did the one in the middle. This is me doing the second. So I put a bead of glue, and then I carefully slid this in to not damage the wall more than it was already damaged. And it just goes right together. It just fits. I don't know, like my measurements were spot on. My angles that I created for the sides were spot on. I was very, very happy with how this came out, and surprised, right? I did the same process for the bottom and for the top, and that allowed me to get those lights all hooked up and in the right position. I didn't show me building the top piece or the bottom piece for whatever reason, but they came together nice. They came together very, very nice. And with a little bit of help from my wife, we got these empty shelves dusted off and cleaned up and staged. She threw some stuff on here and it looks amazing. Very, very happy with how this project turned out. Definitely going to increase the value of our home. And it's very functional in a space that wasn't originally. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And until next time, keep building.